Greetings and welcome to Superior Hiking Trail 101 with Jo Swanson. My name is Annie Nelson. I'm the Development and Communications Director for the Superior Hiking Trail Association, which is the nonprofit that protects, renews, and enhances the Superior Hiking Trail. We are excited to host this webinar today to help those of you who are planning your first day hike, trail run, winter hike, or overnight backpacking trip on the trail. To begin, I want to acknowledge that the Superior Hiking Trail is located on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe people. At the Superior Hiking Trail Association, we work to improve the resiliency and sustainability of the trail for future generations, work we've been doing for more than 37 years. We lead by harnessing the power of volunteers, supporters, partners, and trail users to break down barriers, engage participants, and create deeper relationships between people and nature. Our association is honored to serve as the stewards and promoters of this North Shore treasure, and we're pleased to welcome you to our trail community. If you would like to support our work, please visit superiorhiking.org, where you can become a member or donate to the trail. I will put the links in the chat later in the presentation. During tonight's webinar, if you have any questions, please send them to us using the Q&A feature. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. We are also recording this webinar, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel by next Tuesday. And now I'm pleased to introduce Jo Swanson. I'll let Jo share more information about her background, but I will say you are in for a treat today. Jo worked for the Superior Hiking Trail Association for 6.5 years as our Trail Development Director. My personal nickname for her is Queen of the SHTA Trail Geeks. I use that as the highest compliment to credit how much she knows about the trail. She has more than 20 years of backpacking experience, including through hiking the Appalachian Trail, the Great Eastern Trail, and backpacking more than 20 other long distance trails all over America. She's also camped at every single campsite on the Superior Hiking Trail and hiked or backpacked every mile. So without further ado, please welcome Jo.
Thank you. Let me get my screen shared here. We'll see if that works. I think it works. Yay. Cool. Well, thank you, Annie, for the introduction, and thanks to everyone at SHTA for helping to set this up. And thanks to you all for your interest in this amazing trail. As Annie said, I have been backpacking a lot, but my journey really began on the SHT, and it's a great place for your journey to begin or continue. So I've been backpacking the Superior Hiking Trail about half of my life. And when I first got started on the trail, I did not know anyone who did the kind of hiking that I wanted to do. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have a lot of resources. The internet existed back then, but it was in full-on dial-up glory. Facebook didn't exist, YouTube didn't exist, and webinars certainly didn't exist. So if you're just joining the Superior Hiking Trail community now, what a great time to be here, because we have more resources than we've ever had before, which should make your experiences on the trail a whole lot easier and more pleasant than what I was experiencing in this picture with a 55-pound backpack, which I do not recommend. So let's get to know the trail a little bit. The trail is about 310 miles long, so there's a lot of space there to recreate. It goes from the Minnesota-Wisconsin border up to an overlook of the Canadian border. And along the way, it goes through a lot of really well-known, loved places on the North Shore. Places that you've probably heard of, like the city of Duluth and Finland, Silver Bay, Grand Marais. The trail goes through all of the state parks of the North Shore, except for Grand Portage. So Gooseberry and Split Rock, Temperance River, Cascade River. And it also traverses a wide variety of lands. It goes through county lands, state lands, and quite a lot of private land. The ownership of the Superior Hiking Trail lands is kind of like a patchwork quilt, and it takes a lot of work to ensure that it stays together in one piece. So it's fun to look at maps. I love them, but let's talk about why you might want to come and explore the Superior Hiking Trail. And what stands out for people when they think of the trail is all of the beauty that you encounter out there. You'll frequently come to vistas of sweeping overlooks, often of the Sawtooth Mountains, which may not qualify as actual mountains, but 500-foot elevation climbs add up really quickly and start to feel like mountains very fast. And of course, there's Lake Superior, which influences the whole trail. Only a couple of sections of the Superior Hiking Trail are right on the lake, but the presence is very often felt through the overlooks. Even when there's not an overlook, sometimes you'll get a glimpse of blue through the trees, and you know that the lake is out there. And the lake is really memorable, but I think just as impactful for hikers are all of the rivers and streams that the Superior Hiking Trail goes near or crosses. These rivers give the North Shore such character. There's quite a lot of elevation change near the lake, and so there's a lot of waterfalls and just gorgeous water features. But to be honest, what I really connect with on the Superior Hiking Trail are the moments of like quiet beauty, of nature that maybe I didn't expect. Watching the seasons change is really exciting for me. There's something really magical about being in a tranquil location that maybe isn't a big sweeping overlook, but just has this very quiet beauty and usually quite a lot of solitude. So let's talk about infrastructure, which makes up the whole trail. There's a lot of different pieces of what makes the Superior Hiking Trail the Superior Hiking Trail. So I'm going to go over that stuff. And we'll start off with the trail itself. Now, when people who aren't familiar with the trail think of a trail, they might be thinking of a very wide state park trail. And it's not that the Superior Hiking Trail is never that. It is sometimes, but more often it's rocky and rooty. You'll often have to look at your feet in order to make sure that you're not going to trip over something. And the trail is very rarely flat. It goes up and down a lot. So the ruggedness of the trail itself does sometimes surprise people. You'll know that you're on the Superior Hiking Trail when you see a blue blaze. The scale is kind of hard to tell in this picture, but that blue blaze that you see is about the size of a dollar bill. Those blazes have been recently repainted, and so when you see that blaze, you'll know, yep, you are still on the trail. Less frequently, you will see the Superior Hiking Trail logo. Sometimes that logo is combined with an arrow or some other piece of information that you need in order to stay on the trail. In the last few years, there was a huge volunteer effort to repaint all the blazes, and there's been a lot of work to ensure that signage on the trail makes sense, is accurate, and is updated. And so I would guess that the trail has never been better marked than it is right now. Also along the way, you will find point of interest signs like these. What I love about point of interest signs is that they're interesting. And if you're carrying the guidebook with you, you'll be able to pinpoint exactly where you are. And that's really nice to know when you're out there. Of course, accessing the trail is possible because of the trailheads. Trailhead is just a word for place you can park. And there are 60 such places along the trail. They vary widely in size, but most of them look somewhat like the picture here is basically just a place you can pull off and leave your car. Trailheads are marked with one of two kinds of signs. In the city of Duluth, you'll see a white sign with that blue font, and outside of the city of Duluth, it is the wooden sign. Trailheads are free for you to use. The only exception would be that some trailheads are within state park boundaries, and to utilize those trailheads, you would need a state park permit. Another really important piece of trail infrastructure are the 94 campsites. We'll talk a bit more about them when we talk about backpacking, but these are just a really cool feature, whether or not you're a backpacker, because it gives you another point of reference so you know exactly where you are, and it's a really great place to just take a break for a while. Also on the trail, many times you will encounter boardwalks and really elaborate bridges. Most, but not all, rivers and streams are bridged. If that's something that concerns you, it is easy to avoid sections that have unbridged crossings. But in general, it's not something to necessarily worry too much about. So that is a very fast overview of all of the infrastructure that makes up the trail itself. It's a lot out there, and we could talk at length about any of these, but I just wanted to give you a taste of what the trail's like, so that if you're still interested, we can talk next about how you can recreate on the Superior Hiking Trail. So there are 4 main ways to explore the SHT. There's day hiking, trail running, backpacking, and winter use. We'll start with day hiking and trail running. Now, while these are different activities, the logistics are very similar. So I'll talk about them together, even though in that picture, that is my very cute mother, who definitely is not a trail runner. If you've never been on the Superior Hiking Trail before, I would highly recommend starting with doing an out and back hike. An out and back is basically what it sounds like. You are leaving your car at a trailhead, hiking in as far as you want to go. And when you feel like you're about half done, or maybe before you're a little half done, you turn around and return from where you came. I think a lot of times people don't want to do an out and back because they feel like it'll be boring to come back the way that they came. But honestly, I feel like I see so much more when I'm returning. And even when you come to a vista, you experience it differently when you're coming back. Logistically, it's also super easy to do an out and back hike compared to a lot of other options. It's a good way to make sure that you are where you want to be if you want to catch a sunrise or a sunset. And an out and back means you can leave from any trailhead and experience the trail that way. So for example, I saw someone asked about the Lutsen area. In Lutsen, you could park your car at the trailhead, hike up Mystery Mountain, really enjoy that beautiful area, and then come back down the way that you came. You could also experience the trail through loops. The Superior Hiking Trail Association maintains several loops, 3 within the city of Duluth, and then several up the shore farther. And loops are very popular. They're a very fun way to explore the trail. But that popularity does come with a cost. And that is that the trailheads are often very busy, especially during peak times. And that means that the trail itself is busy. And that may not bother you, but you may want to have a little more solitude than what loops can provide. Now, if you do want to hike one of the loops on the trail, I would recommend trying to come at a non-peak time. So, get out first thing in the morning, you're likely to have more solitude. If at all possible, in the middle of the week, you'll encounter fewer people. And if you get to a trailhead and it is bursting with people, maybe try to recreate somewhere else and lessen your impact on the trail. Another option for day hiking, trail running is to set up a shuttle. Now, if you're going to the North Shore with a friend who also has a vehicle, you can set it up yourselves. So leave a car at a trailhead, drive up to the next trailhead, hike back. But you can also set up a shuttle if you're solo through one of a few different shuttle services. You can find more information about shuttle services on the Superior Hiking Trail Association website. They're separate businesses from SHTA, but you can still learn how to get in contact with them. We always recommend that if you're setting up a shuttle first. So you'll want to arrive at the trailhead, shuttle up, and then hike back to your car. That way, you know that you're not going to miss your shuttle. You don't always know exactly how long your hike will take or your trail run will take. And so knowing that you're heading back to the car and not having to meet your shuttle driver, that's a huge, huge benefit. Also, this year, the Superior Hiking Trail Association is bringing back guided hikes, but they will look a little different than they did in the past. Guided hikes will be loops or out and backs. They will be led perhaps by a naturalist, and more information about those opportunities will be on the website in March sometime. So check back, learn more about guided hikes. That's a really great way to explore the trail if you're a little nervous about going out there, if you don't have a hiking buddy and you want one. It'll be really a fun opportunity. So that kind of sums up day hiking really quickly. Let's talk about backpacking. Now, some of the logistics for backpacking are similar to day hiking and trail running, but at a larger scale with more stuff and probably more distance involved. The Superior Hiking Trail Association maintains those 94 backcountry campsites. They are free to use, and they're pretty awesome. They don't have a ton of amenities. There's usually a fairly flat place to set up a tent. Most, but not all, are hammock friendly. So if you want to use a hammock, that's generally okay. They have one fire ring and generally a bench of some sort, and they have a backcountry latrine. What I find so cool and inviting about the campsites is that they have to be shared whenever necessary. So if you've been backpacking, you've had a really long day, you're tired, you get into camp and there's already someone there, that's fine. They can't turn you away. I've stayed at least 120 nights probably on the trail and shared campsites a good percentage of that. And I have never had a bad experience with sharing a campsite. People are overwhelmingly kind and welcoming. It's just never been a problem. It's something that I was really afraid of when I was first starting out. I was very intimidated by the idea of sharing a campsite, but I've met some really cool people, had great conversations. If you want to learn more about that, there's a really neat article on the SHTA website by volunteer Anna Swartz, who talks about her experiences sharing campsites. With 94 campsites, there are so many to choose from. If you do backpack on the SHT, it is required that you're staying at those campsites because of the land ownership. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of private land out there. And the only way to know for sure that you are staying somewhere where it is legal for you to be staying is to just stay at those sites. But they're really nice. They're typically named after a feature in the area, a water feature or something else cool. And they have character and they're really nice. You can also explore the Superior Hiking Trail in winter, but it comes with some additional logistics. You should always plan ahead and prepare, but in winter, even more so. To begin with, not all of the SHT trailheads are plowed in the winter. So you'll need to figure out which ones are plowed. I should also mention that on the north end of the trail, there are some roads leading to the trailheads that aren't even plowed. So make sure you plan ahead and know where you want to go and have a backup plan in case that trailhead hasn't been plowed yet or if it's full. Typically, you'll need snowshoes on the Superior Hiking Trail in winter. There are portions of the trail that get packed down due to heavy use, such as in the city of Duluth. There's a lot of use out there. In those cases, you would probably need some kind of traction device on your shoes, yak tracks or micro spikes, something to keep you from falling because it does get very slick out there. You have to be super flexible in winter to have different types of gear with you to ensure that you stay safe. It's also worth mentioning that winter lasts a really long time on the North Shore. On the left is Round Mountain Campsite in mid-April one year. Wow. I knew what I was getting into. I was aware that there was still snow and I camped out and had fun, but I knew that that was the experience I would be getting. I met other people on the trail who had no idea that there would still be snow and they were having a really bad day. On the right, this picture was taken in mid-May, a different year. And this is known as monorail, where snow gets compacted, melts, refreezes, and creates a kind of treacherous path of ice. If you're coming to the trail in the early season, please be aware that spring takes a really long time to arrive. I would say that the North Shore is easily a month behind where the Twin Cities are. So if you live in central or southern Minnesota and it's a really beautiful day, just do some research and know that that doesn't mean that it's time yet to hit the trail. It's also worth noting that during the freeze-thaw time in fall and in spring, parts of the trail are really fragile. And the city of Duluth even closes that portion of the trail to ensure that it doesn't get too damaged. If you are hiking during that time and you come across a place where it's clear that hiking will cause damage, please, if you can, turn around and find a more sustainable place to recreate. All right, so no matter how you are coming to enjoy the Superior Hiking Trail, it's crucial that you take some basic safety precautions. Now, we could talk about safety for an entire hour, and I'm just going to hit on a few really important things. Please don't consider this all you need to know about safety. It is not. Do a little more research on safety before coming. But first off, you're going to want to plan ahead and prepare. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. My next piece of advice would be to dream small, at least at first. If you've never been on the Superior Hiking Trail before, you may not know how fast you can go. You may not know how your body reacts to the trail. And it is so much better to plan a couple mile short hike and do it successfully than to plan to do a big 15-mile day and limp your way back to the car. Have a really good small success rather than a really big failure. And I will fully admit that I made this mistake when I was first starting off. I definitely tried to do more than I should have. Also, you want to make sure that you let someone know where you're going and when you plan to be back. Cell reception has gotten a whole lot better on the trail in the last 15 years, but you should not rely on having it. And when you do let someone know where you're going and when you plan to be back, make sure that person knows that they're supposed to do something with that information. Make sure that you let them know that you'll check in with them, and if you don't, they should take a course of action. So let's talk about how you prepare for your adventure on the Superior Hiking Trail. And this is whether you are day hiking, trail running, whatever. These are some steps that you can take to ensure that you have a good experience out there. First, you want to gather your resources. You're going to want to check on trail conditions and updates that may exist. You'll want to ensure that you have an updated weather forecast for where you're going. And you want to make sure that you arrive at the trail with the essential gear that you need to stay safe. So let's talk about resources. This is really where things have changed so much since I started hiking, and there's a lot to choose from, and I'll try to break this down so that you know what resources are right for you. So first in that picture, we have the Trail Atlas. This is an entire map set that covers all the trail in full color. It's a fantastic resource. You can also purchase different segments of the trail. So if you know you're only going to one specific area, you can buy just that specific area. These are available printed that you can purchase through the SHTA store. You can also get them digitally through the Avenza app, and you can have it on your phone. What's cool about the Avenza app is that it works whether or not you have reception. So once you've got the app downloaded and the maps downloaded, you don't need to have reception for it to work. And it's neat because as you're hiking along, you'll see this little blue dot, and that's where you are. And that can be really reassuring to people. I'm kind of old school, and I really like having a paper map with me. You can do both, but I would say make sure you have some sort of map with you. Then the books that are pictured are the guidebook and the data book. Here they are. You can see the size difference here. Annie had a really good way of describing these. She said that the data book is kind of like the Cliff Notes version of the guidebook, which is like a textbook. But don't let the word textbook scare you. It's a really cool and useful, fun textbook. If you have never been on the Superior Hiking Trail before, I highly recommend starting out with the guidebook. In time, you may want to kind of graduate to using the data book on trail, but if you want to just learn more about the trail, really everything that we have touched on today will be in here in more detail. You can learn anything you need to know. It's got information about campsites, water sources at campsites, because most, but not all campsites have a water source. It has background information. It's got information on trailheads, which ones are plowed, and then really it'll give you a feel of what you're going to see on the trail. So if you have no idea where to even get started, it's great to just pick up the guidebook, page through it, and see what catches your attention. You can really get a feel for what you'll see. And yeah, it's really fun to page through, especially if there's like a winter storm outside or you're trying to delay having to go shovel. It's a great time to pick up the guidebook and start planning future adventures. You may also find some online resources that are really helpful as you're planning your adventure. You, of course, should follow the Superior Hiking Trail Association on their social media channels, but I also want to draw attention to the Superior Hiking Trail Facebook group. Now, this is a really cool resource if you've got the guidebook and you can't decide between a couple of different sections and you want to get some advice. This is a really good place to ask those types of questions. If you're looking for a few-day hike in a certain area, asking here, you will get so much knowledge thrown at you, probably more than you can use. And while it's always crucial to be wary of taking advice from strangers on the internet, there are very helpful people in this group, and there's enough of them that I'd say the average answer is going to be very, very good. Use your best judgment, but definitely check it out. You can use the search feature to see if someone else has already asked the question that you're thinking of. Another online resource is the SHTA website, superiorhiking.org. There's so much on here. Take some time, click around, you will learn a lot. But one page in particular I find to be really helpful, and that's the one circled there, trail conditions. So the guidebook and the maps, all of those resources are updated fairly regularly, but sometimes there are things that you need to know that are not going to be in the guidebook or on the maps. There might be a logging operation going on. There might be, like right now, damage from a really dramatic winter storm. And when you check the trail conditions page, you will learn what you need to know to update yourself, to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information possible. I always check the trail conditions page maybe a week before heading out, and then the night before or day that I'm leaving, just to make sure that if anything has popped up, that I'm getting that information. Before coming to the trail, you'll also want to check on local weather. I've seen snow on the Superior Hiking Trail at least 9 months out of the year, sometimes not a lot, but if you're not prepared for the cold or even occasionally hot weather, you may need to change your plans. Being flexible is really crucial. You may think that you're coming up for a summer adventure, but having an extra couple layers might be what you need to have. You'll also want to arrive at the trailhead with all of the gear that you need to. A great way to figure out what that is to do a quick internet search for the 10 essentials. There are so many lists, and most of them pretty much say the same thing. You'll want to make sure you've got water with you, enough water for your whole adventure, or a way to purify water along the way. You'll want to make sure that you've got food, more food than you think you need, an extra layer, rain gear, a way to start a fire. And one of my personal favorites is to bring a headlamp like you see here. You may not ever need some of the 10 essentials, but in the event that you do need it, you will really need it. So it's worth bringing, even if you think, oh, I'm going to be back way before dark. Just bring the 10 essentials, have a first aid kit, things like that. And as you spend more time on the trail, you'll learn more about what you need in order to feel good out on the trail. The Superior Hiking Trail can give us so much. I've had so many cool adventures out there, have grown as a person, have met amazing people, but there are a lot of people coming to the Superior Hiking Trail right now. And that's great. We want other people to have these experiences. This is a resource for everyone. But because it is a fairly popular trail, there are certain things that you can do to ensure that that experience is still there for other people. First and foremost, it's crucial that when you come to the trail, you do everything you can to leave no trace. We want to make sure that the trail is just as good as you found it, and if possible, better. So that may mean securing your trash to make sure that it's not falling out of your pocket. If you're a dog owner, it means not leaving little baggies on the side of the trail. If you see garbage that someone else left behind by purpose or by accident, pick it up, carry it out with you. Do everything you can to make the trail as good as you can. Also, SHTA welcomes people to join the community by volunteering. Last year alone, 300 volunteers put in over 8,000 volunteer hours to ensure that the trail remains in good shape. Volunteer projects can be anything from repainting those blazes, like I talked about earlier, to installing a reroute, building bridges, adopting a campsite, and everything in between. The trail absolutely relies on the volunteers who love and support it so much. So you can learn more about volunteering on the SHTA website. It's a really good time, and you'll meet fantastic people. Also, it's worth noting that although the Superior Hiking Trail is free for you to use, it is not a free resource to maintain behind the scenes. It costs $1 million a year to ensure that this trail is there for everyone. When you donate to SHTA, those funds go towards trying to establish more permanent trail protections, or it might be the match for a grant to fund contractor work, like you see here in this picture. Contractors do large-scale projects on the SHT that help the organization get more done and faster. And so it really makes a huge difference. If everyone pitches in, then the organization can just get so much done. No matter how you connect with the Superior Hiking Trail community or the Superior Hiking Trail itself, I hope that I've at least given you a few things to look into to plan your adventure on the SHT. And I hope that you can have some of those really core, wonderful experiences that I've had and that so many people have had, and that you feel more connected to nature and the North Shore and even other people through your time on the SHT. And so that was a very fast overview. And I know that there are going to be a lot of questions. I saw some really good ones come in before we started. So let's see how many we can get through.
Thank you so much, Jo. That was amazing. And I think a question that a couple of people had that we could start with is, do our campsites require a reservation?
No, there's no fee or reservation required. And that's really great because if you're out there, you may have had a plan of where you want to stay, but conditions might be different than what you anticipate. So if you can't go the 5 miles to camp and you want to stay at the campsite that's, 2 miles away instead, you can change plans while you are en route, which is awesome.
I think you touched on this a little bit as well, but a couple people did ask about what happens if you get to a campsite and people don't want to share, or it's
That can be
too
really
full.
If it's too full, the organization does ask that if at all possible, you just kind of tuck in as best you can. That may mean camping pretty close to other people. Try to stay within, if you can see the fire ring at a particular campsite, it means that that's an okay place for you to be. I've never had this happen. I've camped with Boy Scout groups. I've camped at some very full campsites, and I've always found somewhere that I can tuck in. But I also will say that I've been careful about when and where I've gone. So there are a few campsites that are very, very busy. And if you go to those campsites on a weekend, you can pretty much be guaranteed that it's going to be very full there. So I would say any campsite that is on a lake might be a good one to try to avoid on a weekend, especially. In the middle of the week, probably no problem. But weekends do get kind of busy, especially at those really destination campsites.
That's great advice. And a kind of related question for campsite features is Tam would like to know, what exactly is a backcountry latrine?
Ooh, that is a great question. I thought about including a picture and then I thought, maybe not. So a backcountry latrine is basically something that you can sit on with a hole underneath it. There are no real amenities. There's generally no wall. A couple campsites have a little privacy wall, but they are the exception. The campsites there's like a little trail that goes off to the latrine, so you're not usually like in full view of the campsite, which is nice. But it's just, you're out there and you're doing your thing, and there you have it. Bring your own toilet paper. Don't put any garbage in that latrine other than toilet paper. If you are really, really fantastic, you can pack out the toilet paper, but you don't have to. You can put it in the latrine, but that's the only thing other than human waste that can go in a latrine.
Yeah. So, and Jo, how do you handle when you might need a backcountry latrine, but you're not at a campsite on the trail?
Yeah, so I carry it's called the deuce. It's like a tiny little shovel. Mine is purple. It comes in different colors. I don't know why that's fun, but you can dig a hole, dig as far down as you possibly can. The soil on the North Shore is really hard to get a good cat hole dug. There are some tutorials you can find online for how to do it, but just know that we have so many roots and rocks on the trail that it's really challenging to get a good hole. I find that when I'm hiking, my body will kind of learn to time itself for when I'm near a latrine, and hopefully your body will learn to do that too. It does make life a whole lot easier if you don't have to dig a cat hole. But bring one of those mini shovels with, and don't leave little toilet paper flowers along the trail. Go off the trail a little ways, dig your hole, and yeah, cover up everything you've done. Leave no trace as much as you can.
Thanks, Jo. Yeah. So, do you have any? How frequently? Like, what's kind of the average distance of campsites between campsites, and what's the longest stretch without a campsite? Jean Labor would like to know.
Those are really good questions. I'd say maybe 5 to 8 miles on average. I am making that number up. But on any given day, if you're backpacking, you'll generally encounter a couple of options. Now, there are no campsites throughout the city of Duluth, So there's one near the southern terminus, and then just outside the city of Duluth, north of Martin Road. Then that's where the campsites really begin. So if you're planning to backpack through Duluth, know that you'll have to make other options. There are campgrounds you can stay at, but you'd want to have a reservation ahead of time because things do get busy on the North Shore. Other than that big gap through the city of Duluth, there is about an 11-mile stretch without campsites north of Grand Marais. Part of that stretch is fairly flat. Part of it is on a small road, and so it's not a particularly challenging terrain, but it is a pretty long distance for people who are just starting off backpacking. It was a huge deal for me when I started because going 11 miles when I was a beginner was a huge deal. So if you're just starting off, you may want to avoid that stretch and stick to places where the campsites are a little more closely situated.
Thank you, Jo. This is where our planning guide and data book are especially helpful because there are also stretches of the trail where the campsites are really close together. So like an example of that would be the Penn Boulevard trailhead to Highway 1 trailhead. That's a really good section for maybe like a first trip because there's a campsite every couple miles there, and there's just a lot of them on that stretch. So Alexis, you had asked a question about coming into a campsite and it just being totally full. And it's interesting. I thru-hiked the trail twice, and I've been in camp with a lot of people. Like I spent a night at section 13 with 40 people. And the philosophy there was everybody just, if somebody else new came in and we needed to shift our tents around, we did it. And that's kind of the expectation as we share the sites. Sometimes there's really, it may just be full and there's not a place to go. That's something you want to be prepared for on any backpacking trail, which is that you're not going to be able to stop at your planned stopping point. So especially for your first trips, when you're still getting a feel for how far you like to go in a day, kind of how fast you hike, it's good to pick a section where your first choice of campsite, there's another option within a couple of miles. A couple miles on trail is basically about an hour of hiking. So, and then just plan your stopping point with enough time to get to the next site.
That is perfect advice. Yep.
Let's see. Let's talk about solo hiking, day hiking, winter hiking, or even up to through hiking.
Yeah, just in general. Okay, solo hiking. I mean, I've done most of my explorations on the trail solo. I personally have not felt in danger other than a couple of bad storms, which wouldn't have helped having someone there with me. There is safety in numbers for sure, but if you don't have someone to go with, it doesn't mean that you can't explore the trail and do so safely. I would say it's more important than ever to ensure that you've got the 10 essentials, that someone does know where you're going and when you plan to be back. But you also will probably meet people on the trail, not necessarily to hike with, but at least to say hello to. And I have found that people on the trail are incredibly helpful. I was backpacking one time and someone's water filter had clogged and they didn't have a way to get water, and other people were giving them their water to ensure that they could get out. I had some extra iodine tablets I was able to donate to the cause. People are really, really kind and generous in general on the trail. And I have not felt in danger out there. Maybe related to that though would be, listen to your gut. If you are hiking or camping somewhere and something feels off, or you meet someone and something feels off, you don't have to stay. You can keep on going and, listen to your gut, because it often will pick up on things that your brain can't quite pick up on, but somehow you know it anyway.
Yeah, and I can add that if you're really beginning with backpacking, it is a good idea, if you have the option, to go out with friends or folks you may know who have some experience. And I think there were a couple questions in the Q&A asking about guided options, guided hikes. A great way to kind of test out the trail for the first time would definitely be joining us for one of our guided hikes, day hikes this year. There are some outdoor groups that offer overnight backpacking trips as well. One of our business supporters is called Adventures in Good Company. And that, I think somebody had asked specifically about groups for women who are kind of in the 30 to 50 range. And I think Adventures in Good Company would be a good option for folks who are looking to go backpacking with a group of women or in that age range on the trail. They offer basically a guided trip. And then I think there are a couple services in the Duluth area, like the city of Duluth actually runs guided hikes as well, that are shuttled and are with a group of people. So there are a few options that way. But personally, I love solo hiking. It's honestly, I mean, I think going with friends or other people and solo hiking, they both have pros and cons. The pros of going solo are just it's like when I really just want it to be me in the forest and really being able to just stop and be in the quiet and kind of interact with my surroundings in the way that I kind of want to selfishly. Like when if I want to stop and look at the crazy mushrooms that are all along the trail in September and try to learn what they are, if I just want to hike at my own pace, I don't want to be worried about trying to match somebody's either faster pace, or I'm kind of like, I like to hike slower. Some people like to really get kind of a workout and hike fast. And so there are, so there are real positives to being out there by yourself. But I also, like Jo said, like trust your instincts and also trust your desires. Like if you don't want to be out there solo, don't. It's okay. You'll come volunteer with us. You'll meet other people, trail people who are, you'll make trail buddies, or just find one of those guided services. Do what feels right for you. That's the right thing to do. And then there's the safety protocols do become really important with solo. I also use a tool called a satellite communicator. There's a few options on the market right now. They can also be rented from outfitters that rent out gear for backpacking and canoe, backcountry canoe trips. One type is called an inReach DeLorme. And what these are they're like a satellite phone, but for text messaging. So you don't have to have cell phone service for them to work. And you're able to basically radio for help if you do get into trouble. So when I do like long distance solo backpacking, I do bring one of those with me.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a really great way, not only for you to feel better, that you can get in touch with the outside world if you have to, but I think that my loved ones back home are even more grateful for it than I am, because every night they will get a message from me that says, yep, here I am. They can see a map of where I'm at. They know that I'm okay. I use a spot device, which isn't quite as developed as like an inReach device. So I can't really program messages, but I can at least get word out that I'm okay. If something went wrong, there's an SOS button, which hopefully I never have to hit. But having a device like that can really add to your safety, but also just make you feel so much better and make your loved ones feel so much better about you being out there, whether you're alone or with other people.
Let's answer another important kind of basic question, Jo. What's water like out on trail?
Yeah, good question. So there's a lot of it, but if you're looking for a water source to drink from, there aren't very many options for getting clean, potable water. You have to do something to that water to make it safe to drink. We have so many beavers on the trail. You will see their impact in so many sections. And from beavers come Giardia, which is something you don't want to get. And so if you're looking to be drinking water while you're out there that you're finding naturally, make sure that you've got a filter or like chemical treatment or a SteriPen, some way to clean that water. I've taken to using just a Sawyer filter. It's a pretty cheap filter. It's maybe $30. And using that. And what I like about that is it gets all the little chunks out of the water, because water can sometimes be a little chunky if you're getting it from like a beaver pond. And I just feel better having those chunks out of there. But there are a lot of different options for how to make water safe. And you can also, like, as you're hiking through, you may come near state park infrastructure where you might be able to fill up with clean water, but more often than not, you're going to be getting water from rivers and streams, and hopefully not beaver ponds too often, but sometimes it's what you got.
Yeah, out of all the trails I've hiked, the Superior Hiking Trail is one, like, unless we're in a serious drought year, you really don't have to worry about water. It's everywhere.
Yeah. And if it was a drought year and all the water sources were drying up, that would for sure be on the trail conditions page. They would, you might not get a full list of everything that's running, but you would at least know that, hey, I need to be more worried about water than usual. And the guidebook is really good about talking about water sources. It'll mention when you're crossing streams and creeks. And so, as you're planning your hike, you'll kind of get a sense of how often you'll be encountering water.
That's great. Thanks, Jo. Another important question folks are asking, this is going to be a two-part. I'm going to ask the first part and then we'll follow up with the second part. How do you protect your food from when you're overnight backpacking on the trail? How do you protect your food from little critters all the way up to bears?
Yeah, this is a huge deal, not just because there's nothing sadder than a very hungry hiker, but actually something that is sadder than that is a bear that's gotten habituated to eating hiker food. That doesn't usually end well for a bear. So you need to be really concerned about your food while you're out there. You can hang your food in a tree. It does take some time to get good at this, and not every campsite on the trail has a very good tree for doing this, but do the best you can with it. There are tutorials you can find online for how to hang a good bear bag. Carry some rope with you, get the rope over a high branch and hoist that food bag into the tree to the best of your ability. You can also carry a bear canister if you don't want to, deal with the hanging of a bear bag. But bear canisters are pretty heavy, so if you're going out for a long time, you may not want that additional weight. It's a really safe, good option, but I totally understand why people may be reluctant to carry a big bear canister with them. There's another product on the market called an Ursack, which does keep a bear from getting into the food, but I know that a bear did get in, or maybe didn't get into one, but attacked one at one campsite. I don't remember the details of it, but do a little more research on Ursacks, maybe. Annie, do you know more about that?
I really like it for shorter trips. Like for me, the amount of food I carry for between 2 to 3 days. When I'm doing through hikes, I like to be on trail for at least 5 to 6 days, if not longer. And so my only complaint with it is that I haven't figured out how to fit 6 days of food in one, because they're a specific size. But other hikers have. I think I just bring a lot of food on trail. So it might still be a good fit for you guys. And they are really nice because you don't have to get a bear rope up, but I also really enjoy getting a bear rope up, and it's kind of like a game I play with myself on trail. Like how many throws can I get it in? I'm always trying to get better. Like, I'm going to get it in one throw tonight.
My very first night on the Superior Hiking Trail, it took me over 45 minutes to get a rope over a branch. I just thought it would be easy. Turns out I'm really bad at it. So, if you really want to make your neighbors wonder, this is something you could practice at home before coming to the trail.
I think I would recommend practicing it. It's also good to practice kind of spotting the right kind of tree. And there's more information about how to do a good bear hang on our website as well. And also some great videos online from various, like Leave No Trace. The Leave No Trace website has really good, simple videos about how to do it well and effectively. The second part of this question, Jo, is what kind of animal encounters are people likely to have on the trail?
Well, deer are very common. Mosquitoes can be common in season. Ticks can be common. Ooh, come to the trail for mosquitoes and ticks. No, there are, you will see some wildlife, lots of birds, all kinds of birds. I'm not a bird person, but I know that there were birds. And it is rare to see large mammals. Of course, people come to the trail and often think they're going to see a moose or a bear. And I've never seen a bear on the SHT. I've probably hiked like 1,000 miles on the trail, never seen a bear. I heard one, and I've seen evidence that they exist, and I've heard stories from people that they exist. So I know bears are out there, but your chances of encountering one are really, really small. I've seen, I think, 3 moose, but again, like that's over the course of 1,000 miles of hiking on the trail. So you might get really lucky if that's your goal, is to encounter a moose. Maybe, but don't assume you're going to see one, and you also don't have to be really afraid of the large mammals out there, because they can hear you coming and they are very afraid. And the chances that you're going to see one are so minimal. And if you are lucky enough to see one, be grateful and know that it might not happen again, or not for a really long time. But yeah, deer, birds, butterflies, you'll see evidence of beavers or beavers in beaver ponds. I'm trying to think, what have you encountered, Annie? I'm sure you've seen some animals out there.
I have, like Jo, though, I've never seen a bear or a wolf. But I have seen we have very curious garter snakes on the SHT for some reason. Like I've had some really friendly encounters with them. Also skunks. I had nearly a face-to-face with a skunk, which I was not interested in participating in, actually. And I kept saying, hey, skunk, hey, skunk, hey, skunk. And finally, he or she was like, oh, there's a human. I'll go the other way. And porcupines. Oh my gosh, I love porcupines. They appear to believe that they own the forest. I think that's a fair assumption on their part. And so they're like the least likeliest animal to get out of the way in my experience, but they're just so cool to see up close. And what Jo said is, in my experience, and I have probably more than 3,000 miles of long distance backpacking experience and living in the woods for more than 5 months straight. Animals do not want to tangle with us if they can possibly avoid it. They will leave you alone. And I think what we really just have to be prepared for those times when, say, we come around a blind corner and they just may not know we're coming. And in those cases, it's just best to kind of be calm and try to give the animal space as much as possible, and just kind of, get away from the situation if you can.
That exact situation happened to me. I totally forgot about wolves. It was very early in the morning. I turned a corner and there was a wolf in the middle of the trail. It was very close to me. I said hello and it ran away. So that was my big wolf experience. Yeah, it wanted nothing to do with me. It was mutual. I wanted nothing to do with it.
Okay, well, it is 11 o'clock. We do have some more really good questions, Jo. Would you, do we have enough time to maybe hang out for another 15 minutes?
Totally,
to answer?
no problem. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. And for those of you who just plan to do 10 to 11 today, please just know we're going to record this and post it to our website or our YouTube channel and our webinar webpage next week. So if you need to leave and you want to catch this part, you can come back and do that later. And before you go, we would just really appreciate it, now that you've seen our presentation about just how awesome the trail is, how long it is, and how much work goes into keeping it amazing for you guys to explore. If you could please consider giving a gift to the trail to help support that work, we would be so grateful. And it'll keep the trail in great shape for all of us to enjoy. And the links to donate or become a member are in the chat box or at superiorhiking.org.
They do great work.
The Superior Hiking Trail is like, it's an amazing community. We're a community. Yep. And we're all, and to keep it as great as it is, to keep it a place where you don't need reservations, where you can literally just drive up, get out of your car and go off into the wilderness for a week or 3 weeks or whatever you want to do, or a night. Yeah, we all kind of got to pitch in to keep it that way.
Yeah.
All right.
Gigantic group project.
Best one on the North Shore. Best one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for kind of 2 to 3 night trips that you like to give?
I have a zone that I'll give. So because there are not backcountry campsites within the city of Duluth, I would say, avoid that part as a beginner backpacker. And I would also say to avoid the very northernmost section, just because up in the far north, you are way out there. There's less reception. There are just fewer resources if you need to bail out. So I would say pick something between like Two Harbors and Grand Marais in that area. I really love the section of trail between Duluth and Two Harbors. There's a lot of solitude out there, but there are not as many big vistas and not as many big waterfalls. And I personally really love that. And it's not as well traveled for that reason. But if you're looking for the typical Superior Hiking Trail experience with big overlooks and really dramatic water features, then, between Duluth and Grand Marais is kind of the sweet spot, I would say. I love the Finland area specifically, but that is just because I'm emotionally attached to Finland. There are a lot of really great campsites in the Finland area, meaning that there's a lot of them. And so it can be a good place for beginners to go because you'll have different options of tailoring how far you want to go. If you get to a site that's really busy, there's, another one not too far away. Anything you'd add, Annie?
This question, when people ask for specific recommendations for them, the first thing I confess to is that it's really hard for us to give you a specific, like, go from point A to point B and do X amount of miles each day, because I know how far I like to hike in a day. I know my hiking speed. I know stuff like that. And it's very variable among people. I mean, there are people out there who they want to do 50 miles in a day because they're these kind of like ultra, athletes. And so the recommendation I would give them would be completely useless because I like to do about 15 miles a day. Some people like to do less than that. They like to do 8 to 10, and that's really kind of their ability level. And that's okay. So I tend actually not to give people specific recommendations. And instead, what I can vouch for, having hiked every foot of the trail twice, is that the entire thing is amazing. Like, you take a dart and throw it at the map and you're going to find there's going to be something awesome on that section. The trail is a work of art. The people who built this, it's amazing. It's a treasure. And there isn't a section I dislike. So don't worry about it. I know that people, they want to go out, they really want to have a good experience. It's pretty much guaranteed on this trail. You aren't going to find a bad stretch. And you need to kind of learn your own speed. I would recommend for early trips that people do plan manageable mileage. So if it's your very first backpacking trip, plan to do between 8 to 10 miles a day. And if you're like arriving to the trail on a Friday night, for example, don't try to do 10 miles that day. You need to figure out a way to get on trail and get to a campsite within 2 miles. Same thing on your exit day. If you really need to be home by a certain time at night, you need to do a shorter day. So that's how people tend to plan that.
Yeah, that's really good advice. People sometimes think that if you don't give a specific section to do, like a certain itinerary, that we're like trying to keep it to ourselves or, not be super helpful. But it really is so dependent upon you and what you want out of your experience and how you're arriving. Are you arriving having done a lot of hiking other places, what experience do you want? Some people love getting into camp in the early afternoon, having time to read a book or put their feet in the water or just hang out. I'm definitely a person that likes to hang out and read a book. So, you know, my ideal experience may not be yours.
I just wanted to, Lisa reminded me, I forgot to mention earlier when thinking about like solo or in a group, thank you, Lisa, for reminding me. There's also a lot of amazing groups on social media other than the Superior Hiking group that are kind of organizing hikes. So like Hiking Minnesota is one of those. Women Who Hike Minnesota is another one. There's a women's group specifically for the SHT Wild Women. Sometimes just looking on social media for groups like that too is a good way to find hiking buddies. And a lot of people are asking questions specifically about through hiking, like how would you flip flop? What's a good time of year to go? How do you resupply? Where do you get food and stuff like that? I'm gonna refer you guys to our YouTube channel. We actually have another webinar on through hiking specifically archived there, and we also have a guide in our trail store specifically that has all this information. It's a guide specifically for through hiking. It's meant to be a companion to the 2 guides that Jo mentioned. So it's going to answer all those questions for you as well.
And it's an awesome book written by an expert, Annie.
Okay. And full disclosure, I wrote it. So,
and it's really good. It's a very good resource to pick up. If you're thinking of through hiking, absolutely get it. It is a resource I wish existed back when I was getting started. Yeah.
Cannot sing, like if you're on the fence, you really want to do it through hike, but you're kind of unsure about whether or not it's worth the effort to make it happen. Do it. This is such a great, especially for a first through hike. The Superior Hiking Trail is an amazing trail to do because you can do it in about 3 to 4 weeks. Most people, some people do it in 2, some people do it longer. But it's very manageable, and it's one of the trail offers this wonderful balance between like a real wilderness feel where you really get into the backcountry. You will be in camp some nights and it'll just be totally quiet, just you and the wind and the trees. But at the same time, the trail does route pretty close to a trail town about every 50 miles, which means every couple of days, basically. So that if you do have an emergency or you have a gear failure, it's pretty manageable to get yourself off trail. Some trails don't. It's really hard to get back to civilization. It's going to take a lot of effort, so the stakes are higher, but the SHT really strikes a nice balance between the 2.
And if you're interested in through hiking the trail, I very, very strongly recommend spending a couple of nights on the trail before your through hike. When I first touched the trail, my very first time ever on the SHT, I was setting out to through hike the whole trail. I'd never been on it. I'd never done a backpacking trip before. And you can guess how well that experience went for me. It did not go well. And so I bailed out after a couple of days. And so there are certain things, no matter how much research you do, there are things you'll learn about how you handle yourself out there, how your body reacts to the work of hiking. Those are things you can only learn by doing it. And so, you'll learn so much by doing just 1 or 2 nights on the trail, and you'll have a much higher chance of success on a longer hike if you put in the time to just do a couple days of practice.
Okay, that's great. I think really then kind of the last question really people had a lot of questions about is kind of gear related. You mentioned the 10 essentials good for day hiking. For those, for the folks here who are really looking to gear up for maybe like an overnight backpacking trip, is there a list of gear that you would recommend?
That's a great question. I've been doing it so long. I don't know. I'm not even sure what resources are out there. You probably know better than I do. Do you guys have a link to that somewhere?
No, we don't. And I think the reason why, so this is another answer I give similar to the specific, like when people are looking for a specific recommendation for a 2-day or 3-day trip. Here's the thing about gear. Everybody and everybody are individuals. So for example, when somebody asks about, do you need waterproof footwear? Some people really like waterproof footwear. And it also kind of depends on the time of the year. So for example, if I'm out in like November where there's not really snow on the ground yet, but it's cold and it's raining, right? Like that's a time of year when, yeah, definitely I'm probably going to have some kind of waterproof footwear because of the temperatures in the 30s or something like that. But in the summer, no, opposite for me. I wear the most water porous shoes I can find. In fact, I've even worn like water shoes before because this trail runs next to one of the true wonders of the world, Lake Superior. It's the largest lake by surface area on the planet. And a water body that large basically generates its own weather system and a lot of precipitation. So there's just a lot of water. This is a water trail in a way. And so to me, there's not much point in trying to keep my feet dry when it's warm out because it's almost impossible. And I'd rather just embrace it. And so I wear trail runners with a good grip. I like ultras, but the thing is that what works for me, the gear that works for me is not necessarily going to work for everybody else. So I think there's some good resources like REI is going to have recommended gear lists. Backpacking Magazine is going to have recommended gear lists. Outside Magazine is going to have some good starting points. But it is something, if you're really going to really try out backpacking, something to be prepared for is that gear is an experiment and there's going to be some expense there. A way to try gear without buying it is there are places that rent gear. So you could try rent for your first trip to rent gear. REI rents gear. U of N Bagley is an outdoor rec office up here at the University of Minnesota. They rent gear. So that's a more affordable way to kind of just try it out and zero in on what you like. But yeah, it's honestly every like really hardcore backpacker, gear becomes this kind of fun science experiment throughout your entire backpacking career. We were always kind of trying something new out on trail. You're like, I'm going to try this other pair of shoes this time, or I'm going to try the Deuce Spade, which I cannot recommend enough. That is the one piece of gear that I tell everybody to get is a Deuce. But yeah, so sorry, yeah. It's a complicated answer there.
It is, and gear can be almost any price. You can buy really cheap gear or used gear. I've had good luck buying some used gear in the past, and that's helped me to keep it affordable. But yeah, there is some very, very expensive gear out there. And if you're a beginner, know that you do not have to have a $400 backpack. You do not need to have a $600 sleeping bag. Try it out, rent a gear if you can. Think of it as an investment in learning, and you'll learn what you like. Some people love mummy bags because they're lightweight and they kind of hug your body. Some people need to have like a rectangular sleeping bag in order to sleep. So it's worth spending some money on renting gear. And before you purchase something, try it out as much as you can. An outfitter will let you get into a sleeping bag. An outfitter will let you set up a tent so that you get a feel for what that experience is and if it's something you can handle. Personal, yeah. I wish there was like an easy, like, here's exactly what you need, but yeah.
There's your big three, your sleep system, your tent, and your pack. The tip I did wish I'd gotten as a beginner though, is buy your pack last. If you are investing in gear, get all the other stuff first, your tent, your sleeping bag, whatever you're going to get, whatever you decide on, get that first, buy your pack last, because your pack size should fit your gear and not the other way around. Like you don't want to get a pack that's too big because then you're carrying extra weight like in your pack that you don't need. All right. Well, sorry. We love talking about this stuff too. So we could probably talk about this.
Gear could be its own like thing, but there's no like one right answer. So it would be a very, very long webinar.
Yeah. And we may do a gear specific webinar in the future where we do really kind of dig into some of this stuff too. And so, but we won't do it this year. It might be next year or the year after that. So I think, Jo, is there anything else that you had thought of that you wanted to share tonight?
No, just grateful that you all are interested and learning more and already being responsible trail users by planning ahead and learning what you can before heading out there. So good job.
So before we close down for the evening, thank you all so much for attending. Thank you for the great questions. We hope you found this information helpful this evening. And if you'd like to maybe come to another webinar in the future or just be in the loop on general trail news, we recommend going to our website and you can sign up for our monthly newsletter there. So we let people know about upcoming events and that. We also have another webinar on March 22nd at 7 p.m. We're going to be joined by Astro Bob to talk about trail astronomy. So basically stargazing, northern lights chasing on the trail. There's some really great vistas and campsites for stuff like that. And then April 17th at 7 p.m., we're going to do a webinar on foraging for mushrooms. So mushrooms that you can forage and eat off of the trail. So if you want to join us for that, again, you can go to our website and find more information. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And we wish you very happy hiking, running, backpacking.
Thanks, everyone.